Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club, where three old heads put their old heads together to vibe on some of the most memorable or forgettable hip hop themed movies of all time. And here's HHMC with your HHMCs Boogie, JB, and DynoWright. Season 1, Episode 5, Style Wars.
Style Wars is a 1983 documentary on early hip-hop culture, directed by Tony Silver and produced in collaboration with Henry Chalfant. While the film covers all facets of early hip-hop culture, the main subject is the war between the New York City government and transit authority against graffiti artists in the early 80s. The film originally aired on PBS in January of 1984, and it won the Grand Jury Prize for Best Documentary at the Sundance Film Festival in 1983. So Boogie, what did you think of Style Wars?
Okay, the first thing I liked about it, I like that it was done as a documentary as opposed to a dramatization. I'm a huge history buff. I love watching documentaries of all types. So to see this done as a documentary, it really just tapped into something special for me, and it grasped my interest a lot better than, say, them putting up a fictionalized story and just kind of going through the motions with it. But that was the one thing I did like. So this was kind of what we were talking about with Wild Style. We kind of brought it up as a point that it probably would have flowed better had it been done as a documentary. So this I found a little more interesting. And I like that it showcased actual artists, even those that opposed them. So you got, all perspectives of it. It wasn't particularly one-sided, even though it kind of, you want to root for the quote unquote underground graffiti artists. They were, doing some illegal acts. So you definitely want to get the other side of it as well. They didn't use a ton of music in it, but the music that they did use was really, really good. I loved it. I loved every song that they chose. It was great to hear those classics being played in the movie as it transitioned through the scenes. I did like that it also showcased some of the b-boy lifestyle, because I'm a huge b-boy fan. I love watching b-boy competitions to this day. You got to see the legendary Rocksteady crew. Anytime I see them on screen, my eyes light up immediately. And I like how they show how they demonstrated some of their moves that they use as they're battling and et cetera. So those few things that I definitely loved about the documentary.
Yeah, Boogie, I'll piggyback off of your comments. The music, there wasn't a ton of music in there, but their selection of songs was incredible. They played the message from the Furious Five and Grandmaster Flash, the one that everybody knows. Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. Yeah, when that intro comes on, you're like, yes, this is me. And the other one that really gets me out of my seat every time, I know we were chatting about this before, is Rockin' It by the Fearless Four. That's one of my all-time favorites, where that intro comes on and it's like, rockin' it, yes, he is rocking it. Tito! They just shouting the names and they're rocking it. I love that.
So good.
I'm making a fool of myself here, but that song was... and when you have the backdrop of the graffiti and the dancing, it really pulls it all together. So the music was awesome, even though there wasn't a ton of it there. DynoWright, what do you think?
So the one thing in talking about music that really resonated with me is there's a scene in the very beginning, and it's the artist Scheme, and he's talking to someone else about what they did last night, and this is sampled in a Black Star song. So go back 24 years now to the first Mos Def Talib Kweli album. Mos Def and Talib Kweli are Black Star. And there's a song called Respiration. This is the beginning of the song as they sample the start. And so I've loved this album for 24 years, and I hadn't seen Style Wars before. And so when they talk about, you use this dialogue, and this is the dialogue they exactly use in the song, I got chills because this is one of my favorite songs ever. And this is the origin. I love hearing about where these samples come from. And so that was like the one thing, like, whoa, this really got my attention because this was like a cultural touchstone for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Breathe in,
Mhm.
breathe out.
All you see is crime in the city.
Yeah, man.
It just
It was
took up the
funny.
whole car.
It's funny because I had it on, like I've seen it before, but I haven't seen it in a long time. So it was kind of like me watching it for the first time. So I had it in the background playing, and I had my head down, and as soon as I heard the voice, my head whipped up. I'm like, wait a minute, yes, yes. And it was like and then I just started talking the whole part as he was talking. It was crazy.
It just took up the whole car. It just
Took
took
the
up the
whole
whole car.
All you see is a little small letters. In crime, they say big black block silver letters.
I've listened to that song so many times, and
Yes.
it just
Classic
gets me every
album.
time. It's great to go back to the origin of that clip.
Yeah, that was great.
Oof, oof.
Oh,
There's a lot of things I liked about this movie, but that's certainly the thing that was like a personal favorite for me.
Yeah. I mean, like, as soon as it came on, like, they dropped Eighth Wonder by Sugar Hill Gang. And, like, that song, I mean, the Sugar Hill Gang, they get bumped around a lot because they were ultra commercial, and when they came out, but they had some bangers, and that Eighth Wonders track is a good one. I mean, like, I have the single on wax, so and then another one that I like was Pump Me Up. There's a couple of versions of Pump Me Up. Now this one was Trouble Funk, but there's also a Grandmaster Flash version of it as well, Melly Mel. And that's the sample. That's the song that Q was cutting up in Juice when he was doing his battle. So every time I hear that pump me up, I'm immediately tuning the Juice. So, and JB mentioned Rocking It. Rocking It is a classic. I love that song. But the one that I forgot was on here was Feel the Heartbeat, the Treacherous 3.
Mm-hmm.
That song, I love that song just because of the sample. Anytime I hear that beat, it makes me want to dance. It takes me back to like the old house parties, the old cookouts. There's so many songs that use that track. So, but that Feel the Heartbeat is a good one.
They even played The Wanderer by Dion. Did you catch that?
That's
The
true. Yep.
oldie, right? When they
Yeah.
played that, and it was a lot of the subway graffiti coming by, showing the burners and stuff. That was awesome. That was really neat.
That was well chosen. Yeah.
Well done. So they did a great job with this. And people don't realize, everybody just kind of says it's the 80s, but it was really this late 60s, early 70s, starting the hip hop culture. You get to see the artists that started it all with the graffiti scene. One thing that really caught my attention, they named who they thought was the original graffiti artist, named Taki 183. So I had to do some research on Taki. I'm assuming by the name that it's a Japanese guy or something like that. He's a Greek American graffiti artist, and he started in the late 60s and early 70s, and all he would put was his name, Taki, T-A-K-I 183, because he lived on 183rd Street in Washington Heights. But he spawned a lot of imitators, people just putting their name and a number next to it.
Yeah, there were a lot of guys doing tags and burners with their number behind their name. I remember that. There was a lot of them.
I mean, the trains were their canvas, and the big battle that you see is with back then Mayor Ed Koch in the early 80s, and he was saying that each cleanup cost about $1 million because it spawns copycats, and they're saying this is a quality of life offense, like pickpocketing, shoplifting, defacing malls in public areas. He said if you're a 3-time offender, it would be 5 days in jail. So you see the battle between the local government, the city government, transit authority, and the graffiti artists. So that was a big storyline.
Yeah.
The filmmakers really brought some balance to, I think you mentioned this before, but you would think that the protagonist in the story would be the graffiti artist, but they really did bring other perspectives into this, like vandalism, and people actually didn't like it. And so it also made the acceptance into the mainstream that we'll see later at the end of the movie about that thing that artists at the art show. And even today, modern day, graffiti is more accepted in the mainstream. So I thought it was nice to see the sort of origin of this conflict between underground art and public use.
Right. Yeah. As I watched, there were a couple of the artists. As soon as I saw the names, I recognized them. And like just like with Lee, one of the guys that I definitely recognized was Scene. Scene was a monster back in the day. It was cool to see him showcase because I don't think I recall ever seeing what he looked like, but I definitely seen some of his burners. His burners are like world famous, and I had like he was in that book that I had, Spray Can Art. The Scene was in there. There were a couple of other guys that you didn't really see them forefront by. Definitely remember Revolt and Zephyr also were in that book as well. So, you know, they had some pretty well-known artists in the documentary. So it wasn't just, hey, we're going to just go out and film. It's like, we're going to get the guys who were citywide, you know, as they called it. They had their burners on all of the lines all around the city and said, you know, we're going to talk to these guys and kind of see what's going on. So that was cool as well. But yeah, you said, you know, it was definitely a problem for people who didn't like it. So you definitely got to get both perspectives on it when you talk about something like this.
Yeah, Scene's real name is Richie Mirando, and some people have dubbed him the godfather of graffiti. He started in the early 70s, and he would go on to work on canvas alongside Andy Warhol and Lee Quinones, as you mentioned, Keith Haring, and Jean-Michel Basquiat. Basquiat, yeah. He opened up a gallery in Paris in 2009, I was saying, and he's an absolute legend. And how about the young guy that had lost his right arm in the subway accident?
Oh, Case 2.
Yeah, Case 2, Kase, right?
Yep, he's another one whose name I recognize.
He was super talented. You know, when he was introduced, he had come back from a stint in jail. He didn't know about graffiti. That whole art had developed while he was incarcerated. He comes back and he was super talented. Unfortunately, like he had mentioned the electrical accident that he was in as a kid, and he was severely hurt and they had to amputate his arm. But wow, he was so talented with his graffiti.
And it's crazy because I that's another name that I recognized, but I never knew that he had one arm. I just knew that his work was phenomenal, but I never knew that he had one arm. And I remember he was that one story. He was talking to I think it must have been a reporter, and he was kind of getting his feel. Say, hey, you know, what do you think about this? So, you know, he's always, you know, somebody's got, you know, really good talent. He said, well, what if I told you I did this? And the guy kind of was doubting him a little bit, but he said, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, well, I did do this, you know. And the guy's looking at him like, but you only got one arm. He's like, and yeah, he had a lot of moxie. I give him that.
Yeah. I read the history. Unfortunately, he passed away at age 52. I think he had lung cancer or something.
Yeah.
But if I could do a little bit of like kind of an op-ed piece on the whole battle between the protagonists, you know, the graffiti artists and the mayor and the transit authority, I see both sides of it, obviously. I agree that no one should deface public property and it could potentially damage the integrity of the subway or the train cars. But the kids made a valid point, the graffiti artists. There were murderers, there were thieves out there. And obviously they should have been targeted first to be apprehended. Not saying that they weren't, but I just thought that the government was a little bit short-sighted. These kids obviously need an outlet for their creativity. If you think about it with a lens of today, there was no social media back then. So there's not a way to easily get your name out there. Today, you post a drawing or a photo on Instagram or Facebook, you can get recognition, even if it's among your small circle. That didn't exist back in the early 80s.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, at one point, that somewhat younger New York Transit Authority worker said, out of an intellectual curiosity, I had a conversation with one of the crews, and he found them to be more articulate than I expected. Yeah. It's like, you think, you know, do you ever want to, kind of see where they're coming from, you know, get that perspective.
Right.
And they did develop some sort of contest. I think they mentioned that one of the crews would be selected to paint the interior of one of the subway cars, but still didn't stop them from, you know, being quick to profile them. And and arrest them. In fact, they put up the barbed wire fences. They whitewashed, spent so many hours and hours whitewashing the trains. Mayor Koch even said something about, can we put a wolf out here? I was cracking up, like a wolf.
Yeah, he wanted to put a wolf there.
That was funny to me.
Yeah, but like you touched on about them not having an outlet, and you know the first thought that came to my mind was when we were discussing Breaking Two, and we were talking. I was talking about how, you know, with Miracles, and they want to cut funding and, you know, close down programs and things like that. And what are the kids going to do? Well, here you have an instance before those programs and things were established. You know, what were they doing? They had to find something to do, something that was entertaining, somewhere to put their creative outlet onto something. And there was no, you know, they couldn't, you know, there were no art galleries that they can go to at that time, you know, not in the beginning. You know, they wanted to get their name out there. They wanted to express themselves, and they found a way to do it.
Right. I mean, I think they should have been looking at the big picture. Maybe we need these outlets. We need more charter schools or community events promoting the arts. Commission them to do more work, maybe like a work study or co-op program. Hook them up with an ad agency. But no, they spent all this money. They hired the boxers, Hector Macho Camacho and Alex Ramos.
Yeah.
They hired them. They were boxing champs. And an ad agency, obviously. And I just thought that their slogan was really cheesy. It was like, take it from the champs, graffiti is for chumps. And then there was another slogan they had, which Mayor Koch even screwed up at the press conference. It was like, make your mark in society, not on society. That was weak. That was weak, in my opinion.
Yeah. Have you ever watched the movie, the show Fame?
Oh yeah, years ago.
Irene Cara.
Yeah, that was Irene Cara and Jean Ray. That was Coco and Leroy from Fame.
Right. That's right.
I was like, wow, how'd you rope those two in? But you know what was funny? The funny part, the part that it gave me such a chuckle when you mentioned that Mayor Koch, she botched up the slogan, and the person asked him, "Are those posters graffiti proof?"
That's right.
Oh man, I almost fell off the chair.
We'll see.
Oh man, I got such a chuckle out of that. That was such a witty question.
That was funny. Another thing that made me laugh, the one guy, I don't know if it was Scene or not. One of these guys looked like Meathead from All in the Family, Rob Reiner. Did you just catch that? Was that Scene?
Oh,
no, that was Cap.
Cap. Oh, yeah, Cap, right.
That was Cap.
Oh, so let's talk about Cap, right?
Yeah, let's talk about him. Go ahead.
I mean, Cap was the guy similar to Spit and B Street that was just putting his name on top of other people's work. Like Scene, he would just spray Cap over Scene and take everybody off. Yeah.
He was taking off a whole lot of people too. And it's crazy because they were saying that, you know, they had like a group meeting, but nobody necessarily wanted to confront him because there was a rumor that he was a rather large guy. So nobody wanted to confront him one-on-one, but they were talking about it, saying, yeah, nobody feels like his work is worthy, but, you know, he's destroying everybody's burners, but yet nobody wanted to confront him. But I think they probably were getting to the point where they were going to run down on him. But yeah, it was sad because some of the work that they were putting out was really, really good. And he was just kind of, you know, defacing their work because he didn't like it, and he wanted his name everywhere. He said it wasn't even about quality, it was about quantity. He would put his name on every car if he had to, just to get it out there. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't really necessarily be quality work. It was just getting it there. But, yeah, Meathead.
Yeah, he looked like
He did look like Rob Reiner.
There's always going to be one rebel. And I looked up some interviews with him later on in the years, and it was like, I know I'm going to play by my own rules. Just always one of those guys, just like, I don't care. This is what I'm going to do. I want my name to be in the spotlight.
Yeah, there's always one of them.
Yeah,
there's a certain irony with someone defacing a defacing.
Right.
Art imitates life, imitates art, or something.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there was a couple of other points that I did notice through the movie too. There was one, I don't remember the kid's name, but it was a white kid, and he was talking about going down to the hardware store or whatever, and how he would grab so many cans, and he would just yeah, I get all of these cans, I can get all of these cans in one shot, and just walk right on out. But he was talking about how difficult it was for the Black and Latino kids to get them because everybody was kind of profiling and keeping an eye on them. While meanwhile, he was the one that was running around the store snatching all the cans up. And it's like, wow. I mean, I worked in loss prevention, and I've actually seen stuff like that happen in my store while I was working. So it was like, wow. And then that was something that stuck out.
I picked up on that too. Yep.
But there was some inclusivity in this too. I mean, case 2 had one arm, and there were all sorts of races that in the scene. And so I thought that something that you sort of forget or you don't really know is that it wasn't just one race or one group of people doing this. It's kind of inclusive for the time.
Yeah. I think it was everybody, and that's the one thing too that always seems to happen in areas with lower income is that people mesh together well. They get along. Everybody gets along. It's usually the people with the most money. They find ways to keep those groups divided by pointing out things that are different between them. But in essence, they're all the same. They're all there. They're all in the same struggle. They're all dealing with the same, environment, the same hardships, and they have the same passion, the same music, everything. And they were all kind of, like you said, it was very inclusive. A lot of people probably wouldn't even would have known that if they didn't see that documentary. They probably just think it was all Black and Latino kids doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a young white boy that was funny. He must have been like in his early teens, and he was talking the game and all the cans. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize the kids like this were doing a lot of the graffiti.
Yeah, young. They were young too. Yeah.
Yeah. But all in all, I think they did a great job with this documentary. It was captivating.
Yeah.
Showed you both sides. It had some great music. You got to see it up close. You got to see how they actually did their work. The battle between the New York City government and the crews. Very well done.
Yeah. One thing that I didn't like about it as much, this is just me, but they showcased a little bit of every element that was around at the time. And I'm a DJ, but you didn't hear much about the DJ in it. So it's like, they had to have, there was music being played, where was the music coming from? But the B-boy lifestyle was there. You had the Rocksteady crew, battling, club, and then you had, rap, the music playing. You had guys, even Case 2 and his homeboy, they were, a cappella, a verse from The Message before the music came on, and I'm like, when I heard it, at first I thought they were freestyle. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I know those lines, pushing the girl off the train. The next day they showed their arm on again. That's Melly Mel. And then the music came. I'm like, all right. But that's probably the one thing I would have liked to see a little bit more of the DJ in it, but that's just me because I'm a DJ. Yeah. But it wasn't even about DJs. It was about the spray paint and lifestyle. So I think it was good though.
And like we said in the beginning, it won the top award at the Sundance Film Festival for Best Documentary in 1983. And I saw a quote from A.O. Scott from the New York Times about Style Wars. And he indicated that Style Wars is a work of art in its own right because it doesn't just record what these artists are doing. It somehow absorbs their spirit and manages to communicate it across the decades so that we can find ourselves so many years later in the city, understanding what made it beautiful. I thought that was a great quote.
That's a great quote. That's a great quote.
I heard that they released it several years later, like a DVD series, and it had a ton of the subway trains painted almost like a digital gallery, which would be kind of neat to have or check out one time.
Wow. I wonder if that's I wonder if that's on the actual DVD that you can purchase now. It might be like special features or something on it. Because I was thinking about picking up a copy because that was one of the movies that I've always wanted to add to my collection, but I never got my hands on one. And now that it's back in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go get me a copy of it, add it to the collection.
There you go. So I didn't really dislike anything about it. I just had sort of questions.
Yeah, what were your questions?
One was the mural that scene does in broad daylight. Was it sanctioned? I meant to look into this.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This was official.
That was probably sanctioned because I remember like there was a rec center in my neighborhood. I have the picture saved on my phone, but some guys were sanctioned to do a mural on the wall for the rec center. So that was probably what it was. The owner of the business was probably somebody that was young and hip to the culture. Say, hey, you know what? Here's a wall. Put something nice up.
Yeah. And from a larger perspective, why was it subway cars that was like the best canvas? So because they moved around the city and you could show them off. Like you didn't really see buses get tagged like this or painted like this. So it's sort of interesting thinking about subway cars. Yeah. Maybe there's an element of danger too. Maybe like, oh, let's look into a bus depot. It's not as much fun as like jumping into a train yard.
I'm thinking like probably because the trains when they were new, they were white. They were gleaming white.
Yeah.
Where buses at that time, they weren't. You know, you had the metallic siding and everything.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, but the bus is gleaming white, so it's like, hey.
I'm sorry. I think they can guarantee that your name would be seen in all 5 boroughs, or depending on which line you hit.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what they want to guarantee. You don't know what the bus route might be.
Right.
They did mention that the danger factor too. They did mention the third rail again, which we learned about in B Street.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that exhilaration of risk factor as well.
I remember when they were talking about putting the guard dogs in there, and somebody said you didn't want to put the dogs because they can get on the third rail.
That's right.
Oh, let's put double fences up. Okay.
Fencing the dogs in. I guess in order for the culture to have evolved, you needed public transit in that way. So it wouldn't have worked if there's not a subway system. So sorry, non-subway system city. You're not going to have hip hop grow in your city.
Yeah,
for sure.
You know, it was one thing that I found that was really funny too. And I kind of chuckled at it. Another point when they were talking about, you know, everybody was starting to develop their styles. They brought up the arrow, and I was like, "Oh my God, the arrow!" The arrow was everywhere because I remember, like, even to this day, like I would, depending on what I draw out, I'll always put an arrow somewhere in it, and I'll break it up, and I'll make it like a 3D arrow, and then the arrow. It was like the arrow was everywhere. That was such a key point of lettering was that arrow.
It hadn't occurred to me until he mentioned that. They do have a lot of arrows. There's nothing there to that.
Yep.
And that became a trend.
It's so funny because all of the drawings that I've done, I don't even know whether I just kind of draw them and they end up in a book or a folder or somewhere, and I don't remember where I put them at. The only one I can locate right now is the one with my name on it and the one that I sketched a couple weeks ago.
Maybe someday you'll find it and it'll be a big bonus for us.
The treasure trove of graffiti burners.
The lost art.
The lost art.
Sell it for millions.
Yeah, but I would recommend this documentary to anybody that wants to see the early days of hip hop culture and graffiti at its prime, and the battle between government and the graffiti crews.
Yeah.
Really did a nice job.
How about that dump cotch burner?
Oh, that's right. Was it Scene that did the one where it was the crew being chased by the cop?
That was Oh no, that was Scheme.
Scheme. Okay.
Yeah, that was Scheme.
Yeah, that was Scheme. Yeah, that was the Crime in the City burner.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that was classic.
That Dump Koch was funny. He's like, oh, I guess I'm doing a good job. But speaking of Scheme, I felt bad for his mom. I can imagine how she felt because he's. But it was crazy because they had a great relationship in the sense that he was so open with her. Like a lot of people his age probably wouldn't have such an open, honest dialogue with their mom. But he's like, yeah, I wanted her to know where I'm at. I wanted her to know exactly what I was doing, and she deserves to know. And I'm like, wow, that's very admirable, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, it was very different, I felt too.
Yeah. And she's sitting there and they're like, well, how do you know? It's like, oh, he told me. he told me exactly what he was doing. That's why I'm able to tell you. It's like, I felt kind of bad for her in a sense though, because that's a lot of stress. Your son's out there. And it's not even the fact of him getting caught by the cops, because that's probably the best thing that could happen to him. Because that even if they catch him, he's gonna end up in jail, he'll be safe. But there's the third rail is out there, he could fall and get hurt, can electrocute himself on the third rail. There's all kinds of elements, things that can harm him. And that had to be very, very stressful. I remember my mom would always tell me, be careful when you go outside, and be careful of your surroundings and things like that. And I know even to this day, I'm about to be 46, and my mom still worries about me. So I can imagine, how his mother felt with him being out there at those times at night, putting up burners and things like that.
Oh yeah, early 80s too. You're at the height of a lot of drug use in the cities before it got really cleaned up.
Yeah.
A lot of unsavory elements out there.
Right.
Normally at this time I would ask, could this be made today? But I don't think that's a valid question here because this is a point in time documentary, right?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be made today because they really didn't have to. The original's still the best.
Right.
It holds up.
The thing too is that you have a documentary and you're talking about kids that are doing an illegal activity, and they're walking around with their faces all in the camera, following them around, talking and everything like that. You could never do anything remotely close to that today. It would never work.
No one would agree to it.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see their actual faces. There wasn't any.
They all have masks on, and
no masks or obscuring their faces, or talking in shadows. None of that. It's like, yep, this is what Cap looks like. Looks like Rob Reiner.
And I thought that was funny when we mentioned the very first one, they mentioned Taki 183. He actually literally put his street name on his burners. And who does that?
Yeah.
There's no surveillance. There's no social media. Not today. Everybody has a camera in their pocket in the form of a cell phone. So none of this is possible today with the amount of surveillance that the Transit Authority has and everything like that. It was a different era, different time, but it was real and it's historical and very significant.
Absolutely.
So all in all, let's do our rating that we typically do at the end. We always like to ask, bring that funky flick back. Bring that funky flick back. Or leave it in the vault. DynoWright, what do you got?
Definitely 100%. Absolutely. Bring that funky flick back.
Boogie?
Bring it back and bring it back and bring it back.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. Bring that funky flick back. This is a must see.
Back. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, never let it into the vault. Keep that out.
Nope. Don't keep it anywhere near the vault.
No. It stays in heavy rotation.
Yeah,
so
man.
I was wondering, but like, should people, if they hadn't seen any of the movies we talked about in these first 5 episodes, what should they watch first? And I wonder if they should watch Style Wars first, then maybe Beat Street, and then maybe Wild Style, and then maybe maybe Breaking and Breaking 2. What do you guys think?
I like that order.
Yeah, that order could work.
I feel like you start with like the reality,
Yeah, see the
then-
reality of it first.
and then Beat Street would be the next thing because then there's a more connection to, I think Beat Street was based on a lot of Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, and Beat Street was, and Beat Street was, in the time frame too. Like I think Star Wars gives a lot of the historical context,
Yeah,
the background, how it all started. You don't really get that with Beat Street. Beat Street's kind of just, here's a story, boom.
yeah,
But you kind of know what's going on, and you get a little hints in there. But yeah, I think Star Wars just kind of lays it out first.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll give a shout out to PB, who we talked to earlier today, and big supporter of our show.
Oh yes, PB.
Thank you.
thanks PB.
Ah,
Boogie just pulled out Furious 5 record.
Nice.
Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, Boogie, and DynoWright. Theme music by Boogie. Special thanks to Susan Berger, Tawanda Edwards, and Allison Yaris. Hit us up at hiphopmovieclub@gmail.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hip Hop Movie Club. You can also check us out at hiphopmovieclub.com. On the next episode of the Hip Hop Movie Club podcast, your HHMCs will discuss the all-time classic Friday, starring Ice Cube and Chris Tucker. But wait, there's more. Watch your feed for a little bonus content next week. Subscribe today in your favorite podcast app, and you won't miss any of it. Shout out to listeners. Thanks for tuning in.
And remember, don't hate, educate.